Welcome to Beyond the Code, the podcast where industry experts and brilliant legal minds discuss the impact of new emerging technologies. I'm your host, Yitzy Hammer, a lawyer and tech enthusiast. Join us as we explore the legal, regulatory, and ethical issues surrounding AI, blockchain, and more. Get ready to go beyond the code and stay ahead of the game. Jonathan, this is
how's it going?
It's a pleasure. We're doing round 2 episode with you. Exactly, I think 2 years ago, we recorded our first episode, beginning of February 2023. So you're my first repeat offender, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity.
I'm excited to be here.
The least comfortable recording setting I've ever been in. I'm sitting at the lounge in the airport. There's quite a bit of noise in the background, but we've been talking about doing an episode around memes for a while, and now with Trump token launching like 48 hours ago, and then MELANIA token dropping last night, and the inauguration today, it feels like too much of a good opportunity to pass up on. So what are your thoughts on all this craziness?
So I think that in order to really understand what a meme token is, we have to roll back the clock and look at the history of token issuance, because I think it's every time that there's a new cycle and that there's a new type of token issuance, it's usually a direct result of what worked well and what didn't work well of the previous generation or cycle's token issuances. So if we go back, initially we've got the proof of work tokens going back about 16 years with the initial issuance of Bitcoin and Hal Finney mining Bitcoin, where there was no pre-mine. It was all proof of work. If you secured the network through providing electricity to find the nonce, then you earned tokens. Fast forward, and then there was a slew of tokens that used that exact same methodology for token distribution, token minting. Now, if you fast forward to Ethereum, so now we've got one of the first and most successful pre-mines. We had a proof of work network where a significant portion of the network was of the tokens of the network were distributed not through proof of work, but rather through a crowdfunding. And then we, fast forward again, I think that was like circa 2014, 15. And then, we look at 2016, 17, and a little bit into 18. We've got the ICO mania, where we have tokens that have no relevance to proof of work or of proof of stake. It's simply you buy into the token, and the token represents an ownership of a network, which in many cases you could think of was almost like equity in some type of venture of an early stage organization, crowdfunded. Now we fast forward to DeFi Summer of 2019 to 21, or the whole DeFi wave ending really in DeFi Summer, which was farming, where if you provided economic value to a token, though you would receive tokens, you'd receive a portion of the token distribution depending on your pro rata share of how much value you contribute to the network, either through depositing into liquidity pools or interacting on the network. And throughout this, we've also had social airdrops where you could earn points through interacting with various different social media aspects. You could join the Discord, you could join Telegram, you could retweet things or participate in giveaways, spaces, and the like. Now, many of the challenges that came about with the distribution during the DeFi wave was that, and also arguably with the ICO wave, was that you were receiving tokens either by buying in or by social interaction or by economic interaction into a product that had not yet been built, or at least not yet been completed. It was clear that there was a team. There was usually some type of a lockup for the team members or for their investors early in the protocol's life. And they would have some type of vesting and then distribution schedule, which in best cases was distributed, via various blog posts or tweet threads to the community. But it was all along the concept that there's a product that a few groups, a few core team members are going to be building, and you as almost an outsider community member or second tier citizen of this network, we're earning tokens either through direct contribution buying in or participating in the network. Now, when the regulatory environment, especially within the United States, and you're a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but this is just as I've seen it, when the regulatory environment became dramatically unfavorable towards teams creating these types of projects, and when the vast majority of these types of projects failed, because it's always easier to write a white paper or to create a promotional video than it is to actually build a
Deliver
company.
value.
Yeah. Exactly, to deliver value. So then the market responded via the creation of a series of tokens, which are now called meme coins, which the product is the token itself. You could argue that the product is the community around the token. And on day one of the launch of the product is in its final form. So now there's no longer this expectation that there's a small team that's going to perform actions X, Y, and Z. There's no longer a low float to fully diluted value, meaning they're not launching with 0.5% of the total tokens minted onto the network on day one, and then a high inflation schedule over a long period of time. Rather, the tokens, the product launches in its final form. The distribution is in its final form, whether that's the majority to the team that created the token or the majority to the community that helped promote awareness of the token. But now you have a token which by definition is not designed to do anything other than to just be bought and sold. And that really captures what the terminology of meme is, where meme is a crystallization of a thought, usually with some type of humorous element that has its entire value based on how quickly it can be disseminated amongst the internet. We have memes on 4chan, we have memes on Reddit, on Instagram and X and all other kinds of social networks. And we emphasize that the value is not in anything that's going to be built, but rather that just within the community itself. So I'll pose the question to you. Do you feel like that meme tokens sidestep a lot of the questions around the Howey test, which result in tokens being considered securities? Meaning, is it easier to launch a non-security meme token or suspected security via a meme token than it is to launch a DeFi product where the token is supposed to receive revenue or the token is supposed to be a percentage ownership of the network or anything like that?
It's a good question. I think it definitely makes classification a lot easier. I don't think that it necessarily has to correlate directly to whether or not something is a security or not. I think one of the earliest memes is probably the GameStop stock, which is a security, and it had some kind of intrinsic value just through the memeology of it, gained kind of like a life of its own and like far surpassed what its actual value is out of that like comic element that kind of comes from the community that you mentioned previously. So, I mean, that is a security. I don't think that the fact that it's a meme makes any difference to its classification. But if you look at meme tokens, you had through that evolution of like NFT projects that actually delivered value to NFT projects that, inherently had no value from day one, and then to tokens which allegedly were going to build some kind of like dream DeFi project, to tokens that said from day one. I think they were like shortly after the DAO hack, there was a token that's white paper said like, this has no value, nor will it ever have any value. And it went to the moon. So I like in this industry, which is so fraught with scams and dishonesty, when people say it like it is. And with meme tokens, you're saying like, this is a big joke. Don't buy it. It's worthless. And then through the life cycle of the joke, it kind of evolves and whatnot. It definitely, like, the fact that it is inherently worthless and the only value that's attributed to it is the social and comic value that it creates online. It's definitely easier to go through a Howey classification, because you don't have to try and attribute to it features that doesn't really have, right? You don't have to say, okay, the utility is this. It has no utility. It is not intended to go up or go down. It's just one big joke. if the joke is like really funny, if I also think on the community side, right? A lot of times we talk about building community and giving and incentivizing the community to build and create value. You oftentimes with meme coins have very, very strong communities, like people who, even though something has no inherent value, start creating value with it because they like to, they want to run with the joke and make it and add color to it. So in that sense, it definitely makes it easier to classify something as what it is. I don't think there's anybody who's coming and saying this is security.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you brought up a great part of the story and the history of the story that I didn't include, which is the NFTs. NFTs, the NFT boom from, I guess, 2019 up until 2022 was a very interesting example of how community can be the major value driver, or usually is the major value driver, versus any type of cash flows or aspirations of building a product. And I think the most valuable NFTs were the ones that specifically rejected the concept of having some aspirational outcome as to what they were going to build. Rather, if you were building the best community, you threw the best parties, you had the best celebrities use your image as a PFP, those were the most successful NFTs.
Yes and no. It's true when that was its intended purpose. The problem I feel with a lot of the NFT collections was that was their purpose, just to, be a meme, but they didn't say that because they felt compelled to like have a roadmap. And so they had these like bullshit roadmaps where like, we're going to have a collab and we're going to do this and we're going to have merch. And then you need to meet these goals that make no sense and don't actually bring real value to your community, because you want to be able to tick off a box and say, look at our achievements. And then your achievements are pathetic. So your community feels that they were rugged. Whereas if you start from the get-go by saying, we're just here to have a good time, make the best parties, and enjoy talking to one another on Discord, then like you're going to disappoint less and generally over deliver.
Yeah, and I think also one of the things, again, looking at each new cycle is a response to the previous cycle. One of the challenges with NFTs was the poor liquidity, that it was very difficult to exit a position. You might own on paper $1 million worth of NFTs, but if you actually tried to find buyers for those, you might only end up exiting at 30% of the value or 10% of the value. So while most people were not really collectors because of the art, then you can argue as to what's the point, if you can right click on a JPEG and copy the art. So what's the point of collecting it in the first place? That the meme coins allowed to focus on the same type of community building without the need to have a magic wand or a crystal ball, which would tell you which specific NFTs were going to be more favored or valuable of this successful NFT collection. And so it created a simpler way for retail investors to feel like they had an edge. And comparing that with the DeFi Summer, when you looked at a plethora of applications that all had very similar roadmaps and very similar messaging, we're going to be the XYZ, we're going to be Uber for dogs on chain, or whatever that means. We're going to be the dentist coin or the hamster coin or whatever. So that put the responsibility on the retail investor to dive into the code, to understand the team's progress, to understand the total addressable market of whatever that future vision was, and then to use all of that information to try and be an intelligent investor. Whereas when NFTs came, you didn't have to really be an expert on the tech or on the future value driving of the tech. You could really just focus on, does this have a hot community, and did they get the right people around the table, and are they making the right buzz? So it's simplified the due diligence process and brought it into the hands or the capability or ability of a much broader set of retail investors. And I think that's why NFTs were arguably more successful at attracting a new generation of retail investors than what we found within DeFi products, and then even more so within memes. Now, within memes, you don't need to know which PFPs are hot. You don't need to know which roadmaps are the successful roadmaps, which teams are the teams that have a high engineering capability that can deliver. Rather, all you need to know is exactly what you see, what's transparent to you, which is this community hot, and are people talking about it? So the barrier to the average investor being able to come in, do research, and feel like they have an edge is much lower than it was within other previous cycles.
I think that also another different thing with NFTs was NFTs had the flex aspect, right? You could like make it your PFP and you could wear the merch and you could like, you could own a part of the community. Whereas here it's much harder to like, to show how you're, other than just, pumping your bags all the time. It's harder to associate yourself with the meme at a deep level, unless you create memes that are associated with the meme. But,
well, I would disagree. I would look at like Pepe, which the memes
Pepe
predated, the token itself. I think the Doge dog also did a good job at that.
Also true.
I think that we will, and Dog with Hat did a really good job of creating a visual. There was lots of ways for people to create permutations, and especially with AI generated artwork, it's relatively easy to take a meme coin and then turn it into a PFP or turn it into some like a T-shirt, something you'd want to wear.
So there are definitely a lot of similarities, like from cycle to cycle. Like it's not the first time we've seen a variation of meme coins. We talked about the rug pulls in the NFT space, and also we always had an alt season in previous cycles where many of the alts were basically worthless tokens, not very different than memes. But it feels like now this season is like memes on steroids, right? You had Pump.fun, where you had literally like 12 and 13, 14-year-olds who were just launching their own token, and you could with the click of a button launch a token without any kind of real deliverables. And now, and this is like, to me, like the icing on top of the cake, you have the freaking president of the United States 2 days before his inauguration, just today, launching a token. And it felt scammy as hell, but you know what? After like a few hours, I started to think, okay, maybe there's something like genius here. Maybe there are security elements, that this is people's opportunity to invest in the Trump administration, okay? In the success or failure of Trump's presidency. People are definitely bullish, especially in the crypto community. And if you are bullish, this is your way to show it. And, we saw, like, I think when Shabbat came out here in Israel, token was trading at like $24, and then it went up to like $75 yesterday. And people were saying, okay, and this is only with like 10% of the liquidity released, 90% still sitting with Trump himself. Maybe he's going to announce that he's going to take those assets and he's going to make kind of strategic investments for the United States or whatever. And that could, put the token up even more, or he's going to dump on everybody. And then I couldn't actually believe my eyes when I saw MELANIA tweet, or X, I don't know what you call it nowadays, that she was also launching a meme coin. And then my initial assumption was, okay, this is going to probably, her account was hacked or whatever, but then Trump retweeted it. And so at this point, like, I really don't know even anymore what to believe. And it's kind of like put a whole damper on how I see the Trump administration as being like pro crypto. Like the president himself has utilized the technology to do exactly what it is that most people on the other side of the aisle are saying, that crypto is, why crypto is bad, because like it's just a quick cash grab with people like Trump, and it's got me really troubled.
I think if the goal is, so there's a few elements here. One is the burden of caution, meaning you and I can go to Vegas or to a reservation or to Georgia, and we can gamble our heart's content on red or black or anything else like that. So one question is, what is the job of the government to prevent people from gambling? That's one thing. Now, if you look at the goal, and I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt here with Trump, I have no idea what's going through his head, and I agree that the launch of the MELANIA token was strikingly different than the launch of the Trump token. That if
Not
the
to
goal
mention
is
that it just sucked liquidity out of Trump coin and kind of just like made the whole thing look stupid.
Yep. Oh, yeah, there definitely was a lot of reputation blowback from that. Now, if the goal is to demonstrate that we're in a new era where we don't need to be afraid of big government coming in and telling us what we can do with our money, and that the previous gambling laws are ripe for being rewritten, and that there's really no better way to do that than through the launch of the MELANIA token. The launch of the Trump token I don't think really nailed that home because, he's the president. He can do whatever he wants. He's kind of like lives above the law to some extent, and you can argue whether that's ethical or not. But then having the MELANIA token came in really demonstrated that no, this is democratization. Anybody that wants can launch their own token, and anybody that wants to speculate on it can do that. And I expect that we will see a slew of celebrities coming and launching their own tokens, not because the Trump token launched, but directly because the MELANIA token launched. So
very interesting. I haven't heard that take on it yet.
Yeah, I think that there's potential here. Look, it could be I'm overthinking it, and that it's just a blatant rug pull. But if you're trying to drive a point home, I think you really drive that point home through, the first lady launching her own token.
All right, let's hope you're right. So, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen next?
I think that we will see. I think we'll see a lot. I think that we should take Trump at his face value of where he says, "I want the United States to be the number one place for crypto," and I think that he's going to continue to push for that to happen. And whenever you have permissionless, or by design, by desire, or by definition, permissionless markets, you're going to end up permissionless anything. You're going to end up with 99% of it being god awful, just being absolute degeneracy, and then the 1% being innovation. And so if he's prepared to take the bad with the good, so that America gets that top 1%, then we're going to see an expansion period, which is anytime that you have an opportunity for innovation, you start out with expansion. Everybody wants to launch a new company, a new .com startup or whatever. Most of them fail. You create either external regulations through government or internal regulations through self-policy, combined with a maturation of the general population. We know not to buy South American shares in banana companies and stuff, and that may have had a time that was very popular in the 70s, but because there's just tribal knowledge around the general risks that are associated with such behavior, and we will see an expansion, maturation, and a consolidation, and hopefully that consolidation puts us in a better spot than where we were when we started.
I hope so too. Jonathan, this was short and sweet, and I appreciate very much your time. I enjoyed very much your insights. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Code. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and to tune in again next week for more fun and insightful conversation.